Vienna, 1872. Just as the gaslights flickered to life along the Ringstrasse and the scent of roasting chestnuts drifted through the evening fog, the Hofburg Palace loomed behind her like a stone giant. But Delphine Sutter didn't flinch. Her hands were steady despite the chill, her chin lifted. She wore the same navy wool dress she'd worn every day since arriving from Philadelphia 2 months ago, the collar pressed crisp, the cuffs patched discreetly. No one looked twice at a painter's apprentice. That was the point. Inside the palace's north wing, a fire crackled behind green marble hearths. Court painter Johann Riedel paced, tugging at his silver beard. "She won't smile," he muttered. "She just stares like she's already been buried." Delphine dipped her brush into the ochre wash and glanced at the canvas. Archduchess Maria Theresia of Habsburg-Lorraine sat stiffly in her velvet chair near the window, hands folded like a carving on a tomb. Only 17, already promised to a prince from Saxony, entrapped in a corset so tight her breath came shallow. "May I speak to her, Herr Riedel?" Delphine asked softly. He sighed, waving a hand. "If you must. I've tried everything short of juggling." Delphine approached the Archduchess and dropped into a flawless curtsy. "Your Highness, may I adjust your sleeve?" Maria Theresia blinked. "Are you American?" Delphine smiled. "Yes, from Pennsylvania." The Archduchess studied her face as if trying to remember what freedom looked like. "You must think us very strange." "No," Delphine said gently. "I think you're very brave." The girl's lips twitched, almost a smile. Delphine didn't press her luck. She returned to the easel, heart thudding. That almost smile was enough. She could work with that. Later that night, Delphine stayed behind to clean brushes by candlelight. The palace emptied slowly, footmen, courtiers, the echo of boots in tiled halls. She rinsed turpentine from her hands at the stone basin when she heard a door creak open behind her. "You made her smile." Delphine straightened, startled. A man leaned against the doorframe. Tall, well-cut coat, gloves in one hand. His hair was a shade darker than chestnut, his face angular, sharp with something restless behind the eyes. "I didn't catch your name," he said. "I didn't give it," Delphine replied, wiping her hands on a cloth. He stepped forward, offering his. "Thorian Greer. I teach languages to the younger archdukes." "You're American," she said, surprised. "Boston, though these days, Vienna owns me." She hesitated, then shook his gloved hand. "Delphine Sutter. I mix paints." His smile was lopsided. "You also save doomed portraits." Delphine raised an eyebrow. "You watched the whole time?" "I was waiting for my lesson with Archduke Maximilian. But I admit, you were more interesting." She rolled her eyes and turned to gather the brushes. "No, really," he said, stepping closer. "That moment when she almost smiled, that was yours. Not the painter's." Delphine didn't look at him. Moments don't matter. Only the final portrait is remembered. He was quiet for a long beat. "Why did you come here, Delphine?" She tightened the twine around a bundle of brushes. "To learn, and to send money home." He nodded. "And the Archduchess?" "She needs someone to see her." He walked past her, pausing at the cleaned easel. "Would you let me see you?" Delphine turned, annoyed. "Is that a line?" Thorian's eyes didn't waver. "No, it's a question." She held his gaze. "I suppose that depends on what you're looking for." A silence built between them, warm and taut. Then footsteps echoed in the hall, boots, clipped and purposeful. Thorian stepped back at once, eyes flicking to the door. "That's Captain Eberhard. He reports directly to the Emperor." Delphine nodded. "I shouldn't be here." "Neither should I." They didn't move. Then Thorian pulled a folded paper from his coat and slid it beneath a varnished palette on the table. "If you want to speak again, really speak. This has directions to where I teach. Tuesdays and Fridays, after 5. Delphine hesitated, then tucked the paper into her apron pocket just as a shadow passed the open door. The next week passed in a blur of pigment and silence. Riedel was pleased enough with the progress to leave Delphine alone with the canvas by Thursday. The Archduchess had begun to talk in short, careful sentences. "Delphine," she said once, as the shadows grew long behind the palace's heavy drapes, "do you think it's wrong to want something else?" "I think it's human, even if it's selfish." Delphine paused, brush in midair. "Especially then." Friday came, and Delphine walked the cobbled streets of the 3rd District, her coat pulled tight against the wind. The directions led her to a row house tucked behind a chapel, its windows glowing soft in the dusk. She climbed the narrow stairs and knocked once. Thorian opened the door. He had no coat on, just shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, ink on his fingers. A chalkboard stood behind him, scrawled with Greek declensions. "You came," he said, surprised. "I had questions," Delphine replied, stepping inside. The room was warm, faintly smelling of books and tea. Papers cluttered the desk, and a tune played low on a phonograph in the corner. He poured tea and handed her a cup. "So ask, why are you here?" she began. "Why Vienna?" He sat across from her, elbows on his knees. "Because I told the wrong truth in the wrong room back home. My father wanted me in politics. I wanted books. We parted ways." Delphine nodded. "And the court lets you teach?" "Barely. I'm tolerated. Respected enough not to be dismissed. Invisible enough not to be noticed. Like me." He looked at her, then really looked. "No. You shine through whether you like it or not." She flushed. Then, before she could speak, a knock came at the door. Thorian stood quickly, motioning her toward the back room. "Go." "Hi. Why?" she whispered. "Because you are not supposed to be here. And if it's the captain again." Delphine slipped behind the curtain as Thorian opened the door. A man's voice, cold and clipped, "Herr Greer. The Emperor requests your presence at the winter ball next week. You're to interpret for the Saxon envoy. I wasn't informed. You are now." Footsteps retreated. The door shut. Thorian pulled the curtain aside. "They're watching me now," he said. "Which means they'll start watching you." Delphine stepped out. Her voice was quiet. "Then I won't come again." He looked down at her, something raw in his eyes. "Don't say that. We can't afford scandal." "No," he said. "But maybe we can afford truth." She met his gaze. "Then let's start now." Delphine reached into her coat and pulled out a folded sheet, the unfinished sketch she'd begun of the Archduchess, smiling. "She asked me to draw her not as the court sees her, but as she wants to be remembered." Thorian took it, studying the soft lines, the rare light in the girl's eyes. "This is dangerous. She wants me to finish it. In secret. And you?" Delphine lifted her chin. "I want to help her." Thorian stepped closer. "Then I'll help you." Their hands brushed as he gave the drawing back. Neither moved away. A single heartbeat passed. Then he whispered, "We'll find the woman behind the smile." Delphine nodded. And in the quiet warmth of the lamplight, something undeniable sparked between them. The winter ball unfurled beneath the chandeliers of the reduced hall like a dream composed in silk and candlelight. Footmen moved with the precision of metronomes, and the music waltzes written for emperors rose and fell like the breath of the empire itself. Delphine stood just beyond the corridor that led to the upper gallery, her borrowed gown of moss-green satin brushing the marble floor. She hadn't meant to come, but Maria Theresia had insisted quietly, urgently only hours before, when Delphine had delivered the finished sketch beneath the veil of dusk. "You see me," the Archduchess had whispered, folding the drawing into her music folio. "Come tonight. I want you to see what they imagine I am." So Delphine had slipped through the servants' entrance, helped by a chambermaid whose loyalty lay more with the girl than the crown. The gown had belonged to a lady's companion now in Prague, and though it fit a hair too snug across the ribs, it passed. Below, the court moved like painted figures brought to life. Duchesses in jet-trimmed trains, officers with sabers dulled more by ceremony than war, and at the far end, the emperor himself stoic, unreadable, watching from beneath his eagle-crested sash. Delphine's eyes searched until they found Thorian, standing near a marble column, his role unmistakable now, translating between the Saxon envoy and a Habsburg cousin, his voice low, measured. He wore a tailcoat of midnight blue, and the candlelight caught the faint sheen of ink still stubborn on his cuffs. She didn't move toward him. She couldn't. Not here. But he saw her. His expression didn't alter, not even a flicker. Yet as he turned away from the envoy to accept a glass from a passing attendant, his hand brushed his lapel, once a small, deliberate motion. She understood. He'd seen her. That was enough. A soft voice pulled her from the moment. "Your hem is caught on your shoe." Delphine turned to find Maria Theresia beside her, unrecognizable in a gown of ivory netting embroidered with seed pearls. Her hair was swept into a crown of braids threaded with gold ribbon, and around her neck was the sapphire collar of the Order of the Starry Cross. "I didn't expect you out of the reception line so soon," Delphine murmured. The Archduchess's lips barely moved. "I told them I needed air." You're indoors. Maria Theresa's gaze flicked toward the arched windows. They believed me anyway. Delphine knelt slightly, freeing the hem, and rose. You hate all of this, she said softly. I don't hate it, Maria Theresa replied, eyes scanning the ballroom. I endure it. There's a difference. Then her voice dropped further. I overheard something. My marriage contract may be signed this month. Without my presence. Delphine stiffened. But they promised you a say. A say in the color of the napkins, perhaps. The Archduchess stepped back as a matron passed, nodding graciously. When the woman was gone, she continued. I want to keep the sketch. The one we worked on in secret. I don't care if it's ever hung in a gallery. I care that it exists. Delphine swallowed. It's yours. Just then, the orchestra shifted key. The herald announced the opening of the Imperial Cotillion. Dancers began pairing off. Thorian stepped into the circle, offering his arm to a Saxon noblewoman whose expression was pure calculation. Does he know you're here? Maria Theresa asked without looking. Delphine hesitated. Yes. The Archduchess turned then, her face suddenly older than her years. Be careful. The court punishes honesty more harshly than deceit. Before Delphine could answer, a courtier swept in to reclaim the young royal. Maria Theresa's posture straightened instantly, and she vanished into the dance. Delphine slipped through a side corridor, her pulse too loud in her ears. She found a quiet alcove just beyond the conservatory, where the scent of hothouse roses warmed the winter air. She pressed her back to the cool stone and let her breath settle. Footsteps approached. She didn't need to look. She already knew. You shouldn't have come, Thorian said, stepping into the moon-drenched light. You left the door open. He glanced over his shoulder. I locked it. Delphine reached into her sleeve and held up a slim piece of brass. One of the footmen owed me a favor. He laughed under his breath, not mockery, but something softer. You shouldn't take risks like that. You're one to speak. They stood in silence. The music filtered faintly through the glass, distant now. I watched you translate, she said. You looked still. It's a kind of armor, he replied. If I let myself feel anything in those rooms, they'd tear me apart. Delphine looked down at her gloved hands. I'm not sure how long I can stay. There's talk of changes in the atelier, Thorian said. Riedel may be reassigned to Prague. It's not certain, but if he goes, I'll lose my place. He nodded. She turned her face toward the roses. We don't belong here, Thorian. Not really. He stepped closer. Then let's belong to each other. Delphine's breath caught. I can't offer you safety, he continued. Only truth. And space to be real. She looked up at him then, eyes shining with something unspoken. Then I'll take that. When his lips found hers, it wasn't hurried. It was the quiet, measured joining of two people who had been waiting to be seen. Outside, the orchestra played a Strauss waltz, but inside that conservatory, time stood still. Neither moved for a long while. When they finally parted, it was with a shared understanding. Nothing would be simple now, but it would be real. Snow fell in quiet spirals over the city roofs, softening even the hard edges of the Hofburg's exterior. From her narrow attic room above the atelier, Delphine watched the flakes gather in the window's corners, the candle beside her flickering with each draft that slipped through the casement. Her fingers were stiff, stained with dried ochre and burnt sienna, but she kept working, layering pale skin over linen ground, bringing life to the hidden second portrait Maria Theresa, unadorned, eyes turned askance, mouth just on the verge of breath. The Archduchess had asked to be remembered this way not as a bride, but as a girl who once hoped. Riedel had departed for Prague 3 days ago, and with him went the last protection of formal instruction. Delphine was alone in the palace studio now, permitted to remain only through the Archduchess's quiet insistence and the court's assumption that the American girl would soon fade out of relevance. She didn't fade. She painted, and she waited. Thorian had not come to the conservatory again, not since the ball. It had been nearly a fortnight. But Delphine had not asked why. She knew the court moved in deeper currents than the ones visible on the surface. She knew, too, that letters could be opened and names passed between gloved hands. Still, when a knock sounded at her door just after dusk, she pressed her palm to her chest, steadying the rush of her heartbeat before she opened it. It wasn't him. A woman stood wrapped in a dark traveling cloak, her hair streaked with silver though her face was still young. She held a leather satchel in one hand, and wore no jewelry save for a brass pin on her collar. "I was told you know how to keep quiet," the woman said without preamble. Her accent was Viennese, but worn thin by travel. Delphine stepped aside. "Who sent you?" The woman entered, brushing snow from her sleeves. "A girl who signs her letters with pieces of old music. You gave her a portrait." Delphine closed the door. "What do you want?" "Not me. Her." The woman placed the satchel on the desk. "In 2 nights, the Saxon envoy departs. The Archduchess is to be seen off at the cathedral, then taken by carriage to the train. But she won't be on it." Delphine moved closer. "That's impossible. Not if she wears this." The woman opened the satchel. Inside lay a maid's uniform, plain, worn, but clean. "She'll leave through the laundry passage during the cathedral mass. There's a carriage waiting just beyond the city wall. If she can get to it unseen, she's free." Delphine stared. "They'll send soldiers. They'll search every station between here and Dresden. They won't search the southern road to Trieste." The woman looked at her then, eyes sharp. "But she won't go without you." Delphine's voice faltered. "That wasn't the plan. Plans change." The woman pulled a folded map from her coat and laid it flat. "You'll leave separately. You take this route through the vineyards, down past Klosterneuburg. There's a man with a boat hidden near the old monastery. He'll take you across the Danube. After that, you head south on foot." Delphine looked down at her hands. "She's a royal. I'm a laborer. This will never last." The woman's mouth curved not unkindly. "We all begin as something else." She tapped the map once. "If you're coming, be at the monastery gate at dawn, 2 days from now. If not, don't speak of this to anyone." Then she turned and left. No farewell. That night, Delphine didn't sleep. She cleaned her brushes, packed her pigments into small tins, and pressed the final sketch between 2 layers of waxed paper. She moved slowly, methodically, not because she doubted, but because she understood the weight of what she was choosing. By morning, she carried only what she could hide beneath a servant's cloak. The next day passed hollow and strange. The Archduchess did not summon her. Neither did Thorian appear. She kept to the corners of the palace, eyes lowered, her thoughts louder than the footfalls in the corridor. That evening, as the bell in the Michaelerplatz tower tolled 6, she stepped into the music salon to retrieve a forgotten brush case. The gaslights had already been dimmed. He was there. Thorian stood near the window, coat unbuttoned, collar damp from sleet. He didn't turn at her entrance, just spoke softly, as if continuing a thought they'd begun long ago. "They're watching the language tutors now." One of the court secretaries intercepted a translated letter meant for the Saxon court. It mentioned her hesitation. Delphine closed the door behind her. "Was it yours?" she asked. "No, but I read it before it was sealed." She stepped toward him. "Then they'll suspect you." "They already do." He turned then, eyes weary, but clear. "You're leaving." "I have to." "Will she?" "She's willing to risk everything." He studied her face. "And you?" Delphine's voice didn't waver. "I love her like a sister. But I'm not doing this for her." Thorian crossed the space between them with a single breath. "Then stay. We'll find another way." "There isn't one." His hand reached for hers. "You could be arrested. Deported. Worse." "I know." He exhaled, the sound low and broken at the edges. "I would follow you," he said. She looked up. "Then meet me. At the monastery gate." He hesitated. "If I leave, I can't return." Delphine nodded. "Nor can I." He touched her cheek, just once. "I'll be there." For the first time in days, she let herself believe. They parted without another word. As the snow thickened in the streets below, Delphine gathered the last of her belongings and wrapped the portrait in oilskin. The palace around her carried on bells, orders, the scrape of boots across stone, but none of it reached her. 2 lives were ending. And something else, fragile and unscripted, was about to begin. The monastery lay half sunken in fog, its ancient stone gate mottled with frost. Dawn crept slowly over the hills beyond, casting the Danube in a pewter sheen. Delphine waited beneath the bare-limbed linden tree that crowned the outer wall, the wool of her borrowed cloak growing heavy with dew. The stillness pressed close and cold. A quiet rustle pulled her gaze to the path. Maria Theresia emerged from the mist, her figure nearly unrecognizable in the dull skirts of a kitchen maid. Her hair was hidden beneath a linen cap, and the ring once worn on her left hand was gone. She held nothing but a canvas satchel and walked without hesitation. Delphine stepped forward. You weren't followed? No. I left through the app stairwell. No one but the laundress saw me, and she pretended not to. You're certain? The Archduchess's breath hung in the air. She closed the door behind me without a word. They stood in silence, the great bell above them unmoving. Beneath its shadow, the world felt suspended. Do you have the drawing? Maria Theresia asked. Delphine reached into her cloak and passed her the oilskin-wrapped parcel. It's yours now. The Archduchess held it to her chest without opening it. I'll keep it hidden until I no longer need to hide. The sound of hooves against frozen ground broke the hush. A single cart approached from the north, drawn by a shaggy mule and driven by a man with one eye and a bent spine. He didn't speak when Delphine met his eyes, just nodded once and looked away. Maria Theresia climbed into the back without help, settling between sacks of grain. Her hands trembled only once, and then were still. Delphine turned back toward the monastery gate. He was not there. She stared down the road, the space where he should have been. The mule stamped its feet. The wind changed. Still the path remained empty. I don't think he's coming, she said softly. Maria Theresia leaned forward, her voice low. You don't know that. Delphine pressed her lips together, then stepped away from the cart. If he were free, he would have come already. The driver shifted. We must go, he said, voice worn like riverbank stone. Before the sun clears the hills. Maria Theresia looked down at Delphine. You're still coming? Delphine's eyes swept the road once more. No. The word came out steady. Maria Theresia's brow furrowed. Why? Delphine didn't answer at once. Then, quietly. Because if he's not free yet, I won't be either. Not until I know. The Archduchess reached down, pressing something into her hand. A folded scrap of parchment sealed with wax. If anything happens, go to this address. The woman there was once my governess. She'll know how to help. Delphine nodded once. The cart rolled forward, wheels creaking over the rutted path. The fog swallowed it quickly. She stood alone beneath the linden tree, the cold pulling sharp against her skin now. Minutes passed, then more. A sound behind her hurried footsteps over gravel. She turned. Thorian appeared through the mist, coat unfastened, scarf trailing. His hair was damp, and his breath came hard. You missed her, she said, unable to keep her voice from catching. I know. He stopped a few paces away, chest rising and falling. I couldn't get out. They kept me speaking with the Saxons until after the cathedral bells rang. I had to slip past the steward's quarters on foot. Delphine stepped closer, the fog gathering between them like breath. She's gone. I saw the cart down the hill, he said. I knew I was too late, but I kept running. They stood there neither reaching, both waiting. She'll make it, he said finally. She's stronger than they ever knew. Delphine looked up at him, her eyes steady. And what about us? Thorian's hand reached into his coat, pulling free a small linen pouch. Inside it nestled a brooch, a modest silver pin in the shape of a swallow in flight. My mother gave it to my sister when she left for Paris. She said it meant you'd always find your way home. Delphine's breath hitched. I don't know where we'll go, he said. But I know I want to go with you. She took the brooch carefully, turning it over once in her palm. You're sure? His voice was low. I've never been more. The fog began to lift, and the first rays of sun caught the frost on the monastery stones, turning their edges gold. The road stretched south behind them, quiet and open. Delphine slipped her fingers into his. Then let's walk. They began down the hill, leaving the gate behind. Neither looked back.